come to our final song for ever. I just want to say to you on behalf of the guys in Black Sabbath and myself.
Forget everything you think you know about farewell concerts, because Ozzy Osbourne's final show at Villa Park, Birmingham wasn't just a concert. It was pure chaos wrapped in spectacle. Imagine 40,000 screaming fans, 10 straight hours of music, and a lineup stacked with Metallica, Guns N' Roses, and Pantera. But Ozzy doesn't walk on stage. He rolls in on a custom throne with 6-foot bat wings, hydraulics and all, because standing for 10 hours isn't an option. And if you think that's wild, it barely scratches the surface. By the end of this video, you'll see why Ozzy's farewell wasn't just historic. It was one of the strangest, wildest nights in rock history. The throne, the curfew, and the 10-hour marathon. When people talk about legendary final concerts, they usually think of curtain calls full of nostalgia and a few surprises, but Ozzy Osbourne's farewell in his hometown of Birmingham on July 5, 2025 was nothing like that. This wasn't just a greatest hits set or a quiet goodbye. It turned into one of the strangest, most chaotic, and surprisingly inventive live shows in recent memory. And it all started with a decision that only Ozzy could have made. The event was billed as Back to the Beginning, a nod to the fact that Birmingham was where Black Sabbath first started shaking up the music world in the late 1960s. Fans had been waiting for months, some even flying in from Japan, Brazil, and the United States. And the hype was so big that most people assumed it would be stretched across a weekend festival. That would have been easier on the city, easier on the crew, and easier on Ozzy himself. But when asked why he wanted it all packed into a single day, Ozzy gave the BBC a line that instantly became a headline. "If I'm going out in a single blast." So that's exactly what happened. The gates opened at 1 in the afternoon, and from then until curfew at 11 p.m., Villa Park Stadium turned into a non-stop wall of music. 23 acts rotated through, from classic rock staples to newer metal bands who grew up worshipping Sabbath, and the changeovers were so tight it almost didn't seem real. The crew managed a 17-minute swap between the Black Sabbath reunion set and the massive all-star finale, something that usually takes an hour at the average festival. People backstage said it felt like a military operation, but in the middle of it all, Ozzy was calm, smiling, and clearly loving every second. Now, one thing everyone was curious about before the night even started was how Ozzy would physically manage the show. He's been open about living with Parkinson's disease, and the idea of him standing and stomping across the stage for 10 hours just wasn't realistic anymore. The solution? A throne. But not just any throne. Picture a giant rolling black leather chair outfitted with carbon fiber bat wings that actually opened up, like a comic book prop come to life. Hydraulics allowed the whole platform to glide forward, so Ozzy could still move closer to the crowd without ever leaving his seat. It was part necessity, part rock and roll theater, and somehow it felt even more Ozzy than if he had been running around like it was 1980 again. And here's where it gets stranger. Fans in the front rows swore that the headrest of the throne had eyes that glowed red and even seemed to pulse along with the music. It felt eerie and perfectly in line with Ozzy's bat-biting reputation. Later, the lighting director admitted with a laugh that the effect was nothing more than a pair of cheap bicycle lights taped under the fabric. Simple, a little ridiculous, and totally effective. The kind of low-tech trick that somehow made the night feel even more authentic. And believe it or not, this was only the first surprise of the evening. Because while Ozzy commanded the stage from his throne, the responsibility of keeping the marathon show moving fell to someone that no one in the audience could have predicted. Jason Momoa, Aquaman, and unlikely MC. Of all the things people thought they might see at Ozzy Osbourne's farewell concert, No one expected Jason Momoa to be running the stage. You'd think maybe Sharon would grab the mic, or a famous British DJ, or even one of Ozzy's longtime bandmates. But no, it was Aquaman himself, a 6'4" Hawaiian actor with a booming voice and more charisma than most arenas can handle. The crowd looked stunned when he walked out first thing, leather coat flowing, arms wide, announcing that he was there to guide everyone through Ozzy's last stand. Now, this wasn't as random as it looked. A few months earlier, Momoa had directed an Ozzy music video that never actually got released. And during that process, the two somehow clicked. They weren't just co-workers, they ended up as late-night drinking buddies swapping war stories. Once the show kicked off at noon, Momoa went full throttle. He stalked across the stage like a pro wrestler, hyping up the crowd with the energy of a ring announcer. At one point, he introduced Tony Iommi as the Riff Lord of the Universe, which immediately got picked up on fan shirts and posters the very next day. He also kept tripping over Birmingham, pronouncing it the American way, and the locals loved it. They roared every time he got it wrong, and he just leaned into the joke. And then came the little surprises only Ozzy's circle could pull off. Momoa introduced Kelly Osbourne as my future sister-in-law, which at the time just sounded like another wild Jason Momoa quip. But 2 hours later, during the finale, the joke became very real when a proposal actually happened on stage. In between bands, Momoa even kept the energy up with Guinness chugging contests, and at one point, he dumped an entire pint over his head while 40,000 fans screamed. The next morning's headlines couldn't resist it. Aquaman becomes Metal Man. Even Momoa admitted later that the gig rattled him more than surfing 50-foot waves, saying, "I've fought intergalactic warlords, but nothing's scarier than a stadium of metalheads checking your cred." The drum-off that stole the show. Just when everyone thought they'd seen it all, the concert threw the first real curveball of the day, a full-blown drum-off that nobody saw coming. It was 4:15 in the afternoon when the stage erupted into a riot of rhythm. 17 drummers lined up across the platform like a metal orchestra ready to duel. And this wasn't a gimmick. It was serious, high stakes, and perfectly chaotic. Front and center, exuding quiet authority, sat Bill Ward, Black Sabbath's original drummer, on a minimalist 4-piece kit that looked tiny compared to the giants behind him. Behind him were some of the loudest, fastest, and most technically insane drummers in modern rock. Jay Weinberg of Slipknot, known for hammering double kicks at speeds that seem physically impossible. Lars Ulrich of Metallica, rocking a cheeky Bill for President shirt. And Danny Carey of Tool, who, in true rock star fashion, arrived just 20 minutes before call time via helicopter. The logistics alone were a nightmare, but somehow production made it work. The rules were simple. Each drummer had 1 minute to solo, and the audience would decide the winner based on who shook Villa Park the hardest. The prize? Playing the iconic Iron Man intro later that night with Black Sabbath. The crowd, already buzzing from 10 hours of music, leaned in as Weinberg went first, smashing the kit like a man possessed, double kick pedals flying at over 200 beats per minute. Fans were losing it, lights flashing, cameras shaking. It was pure chaos wrapped in precision. Then it was Ward's turn. At 73 years old, he stood, raised a single drumstick, and started the original, unmistakable Sabbath bell pattern. Simple, raw, perfectly timed. You could feel it in your chest, like a physical heartbeat for the crowd. The decibel meter spiked to 126, equivalent to a jet engine taking off, and the audience erupted. Ward's performance wasn't flashy. It was iconic, deliberate, and emotionally devastating. The crowd's roar sealed it. The legend had claimed victory. Back in the press tent, Lars Ulrich laughed, shrugging as if it were no big deal. "I flew 6,000 miles to lose to my hero," he said. "Totally worth it." Moments like these didn't just make headlines, they went viral within hours. Clips of Ward's masterclass drumming dominated social media, proving that even in a 10-hour concert, the most unexpected moment could become the most unforgettable. Supergroups, surprise covers, and satellite tributes. From the moment the first guitar riff rang out, it became clear that Back to the Beginning wasn't just a show. It was a controlled chaos of musical talent that sometimes felt like it might explode off the stage. And honestly, even the ushers admitted later that keeping track of who was playing with whom would have required a cheat sheet. Bands weren't just performing, they were merging, forming spontaneous supergroups that lasted for 1 or 2 songs and then dissolved into the next mind-blowing collaboration. Take Billy Corgan from Smashing Pumpkins. He somehow ended up jamming with Slash and Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses, turning into a one-off power trio that tore through NIB with such energy that fans near the stage were practically vibrating. Then, in a completely unexpected pairing, Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine and Jonathan Davis of Korn shared vocals on a down-tuned guttural version of Paranoid that felt heavier than anything the audience had imagined. And if you thought it couldn't get wilder, Sammy Hagar and Zakk Wylde went head-to-head on War Pigs, their fingers flying up and down the fretboards in a dizzying duel that had fans counting solos just to keep up. The surprises didn't stop with guitar gods. Steven Tyler showed up out of nowhere, fronting an all-star band for a high-energy Train Kept A-Rollin'. True to his Aerosmith style, he couldn't resist throwing in playful tweaks, changing every third syllable to Birmingham, a nod to the city that had hosted this legendary farewell. The crowd loved it, cheering every exaggerated syllable as if Tyler himself had just reinvented the song. Meanwhile, the massive video screens were constantly flashing pre-recorded tributes, adding another layer of spectacle. A C/DC sent a short, no-nonsense for Ozzy Forever, while Elton John appeared with sparkly devil horns, performing a haunting piano rendition of Changes. But the absolute showstopper was Dolly Parton, joining via satellite to duet with Ozzy's original 1981 vocal on Mama, I'm Coming Home, and then topping it off with her signature yodel on the final chorus. Fans went wild, and one tweet perfectly summed it up. Dolly just out-Ozzy'd Ozzy, racking up hundreds of thousands of likes before the encore even started. Tributes kept coming, from Def Leppard and Jack Black to Fred Durst, each reminding everyone that Ozzy's influence stretches far beyond heavy metal, touching rock, pop, and even country. By the end, it wasn't just a concert, it was a testament to how far-reaching his legacy really is. How one man could inspire multiple generations of artists to come together, improvise, and create moments no one expected. And just when you thought the night couldn't get any more memorable, something completely different happened. A moment so personal, so heartwarming, that it almost stole the spotlight from the Prince of Darkness himself. The surprise proposal. Just when everyone thought they were witnessing the pinnacle of Ozzy's final concert, something completely unexpected happened, off stage, that had the power to stop the entire festival in its tracks. It wasn't happening under the spotlights or in front of the screaming masses. It was in the chaos of the catering tent, a place usually reserved for quick sandwiches and energy drinks. But on this day, it became the scene of a proposal that no one saw coming. Sid Wilson, the turntablist from Slipknot, known for his intense, high-octane performances and that signature mask that made him look like a force of nature on stage, somehow managed to switch gears entirely. In the middle of the catering chaos, with trays of half-eaten food and discarded cups all around, he dropped to one knee and proposed to Kelly Osbourne, and of course, Jason Momoa, who had been running around like a hype man all day, decided this was too good not to share and started live streaming the entire moment to Instagram. Sid, still in his black jumpsuit and mask, kneeling as if he were performing the most intimate part of a set, while Kelly, rocking a vintage Black Sabbath Master of Reality tee, looked completely stunned. You could see the mixture of shock, disbelief, and pure joy on her face. And before he could even get the words out, she said yes. The tent exploded. The catering staff cheered. Fans who had caught glimpses on their phones went viral immediately. And even the Osbourne family got caught up in the emotion. Sharon Osbourne, usually the composed matriarch, was openly crying, and Ozzy himself wheeled in with that mischievous sparkle in his eyes that everyone knows so well. True to Ozzy form, he didn't just offer words of congratulations. He handed Sid a half-eaten sandwich, grinned and quipped, "Welcome to the family, mate. Good luck. You'll need it." It was chaotic, absurd, and perfectly Ozzy. The ring itself was a statement piece, a black diamond bat motif, custom-made by a top LA jeweler, reflecting both Kelly's edgy style and the Osbourne family's legendary rock and roll aesthetic. For 5 minutes, the roar of 40,000 fans outside faded into background noise because everyone's attention was on this incredibly personal moment. Reporters scrambled to get footage. Instagram feeds exploded, and fans immediately dubbed it the proposal that upstaged the headliner. In a festival built around spectacle, guitar solos, and theatrical thrones, it was a reminder that human connection, love, joy, and surprise can steal the show just as powerfully as any stage effect. And as everyone eventually turned back to Ozzy and the music, the energy in the tent carried over to the crowd, blending rock and roll chaos with something unexpectedly tender, setting the stage for the final record-breaking chapter of the evening, the 140 million pound goodbye. What really blew people away about Ozzy's final concert wasn't just the music, the throne, or the wild guest appearances, it was the money. Every single pound made that day went straight to charity. We're talking ticket sales, merch, global pay-per-view revenue, literally everything. The promoters had been expecting something respectable, maybe 30 million pounds, and instead they ended up staring at a number that made their jaws drop. 140 million pounds. Not million, not billion, but 140 million. To put that in perspective, it wasn't just the biggest single-day music fundraiser in UK history. It shattered previous records, even eclipsing legendary events like Live 8. The donations weren't just tossed around randomly, they were carefully chosen causes that mattered to the Osbourne family. A huge portion went to Cure Parkinson's, the charity tackling the disease that had been a part of Ozzy's life for years. Birmingham Children's Hospital, a cornerstone of his hometown, received another sizable donation, supporting everything from neonatal care to pediatric surgeries. And then there was Acorn Children's Hospice, helping children with terminal illnesses and providing vital support to families. A cause that really resonated with both Ozzy and Sharon. Sharon Osbourne summed it up in her trademark mix of humor and blunt honesty. "My husband spent 50 years scaring parents," she told reporters with a glint in her eye, "and now he's buying incubators for babies. Deal with it." And that really captures it. The man known for biting heads off bats, smashing guitars, and lighting up stages with chaos had just orchestrated one of the most astonishing acts of generosity the music world had ever seen. It was a reminder that behind all the theatrics, the leather, and the black eyeliner, there was a surprisingly grounded and thoughtful human being. For fans, it wasn't just a concert, it was a historic moment, a once-in-a-lifetime mashup of rock, spectacle, and real-world impact. The money, the effort, and the heart behind it all ensured that Ozzy's farewell wasn't just remembered for the wild performances or the dramatic stage antics. it was remembered for the lasting difference it made. 17 days later. The most surreal part of Ozzy's farewell saga came just 17 days after that unforgettable gig at Villa Park. On July 22, 2025, Ozzy Osbourne passed away peacefully at home, aged 76. The news hit like a lightning bolt, fans around the world scrambled to confirm it, and the official Black Sabbath website actually crashed under the traffic within minutes. People couldn't believe that the man who had just put on arguably the most chaotic, theatrical, and over-the-top concert of his career was suddenly gone. The reaction was immediate and global. At Villa Park, fans left flowers, candles, handwritten notes, and even spray-painted messages along the stadium walls. Someone scrawled, "Thank you for the madness," in bright red paint, which, honestly, feels like the perfect epitaph for someone who lived life at full throttle, never holding back. Tributes flooded in from every corner of the music world. Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine, David Ellefson from Megadeth, even younger artists who had grown up listening to Black Sabbath all credited Ozzy as the reason they picked up an instrument. Friends and family later revealed that Ozzy had known his time was limited, and that final concert wasn't just a show. It was a deliberate, almost spiritual farewell, a chance to leave on his own terms. Sharon Osbourne put it best in a heartfelt statement. "He left how he lived," she wrote, "on his own terms, surrounded by love and noise." And that really sums up Ozzy, doesn't it? From biting heads off bats on stage to leading the loudest, most absurd spectacle anyone could imagine, he did it all his way. That final show wasn't just a concert. It was a supernova of energy, a final blazing reminder of why he became the Prince of Darkness. Today, that legendary Batwing throne is preserved in Birmingham's Music Museum. Fans can go see it, and if you look closely, you might notice the faint red glow of the $12 LED bike light that made the throne's eyes pulse that night. An unassuming tiny detail that somehow captured the spirit of Ozzy himself. A mix of chaos, genius, and a little bit of fun. If these stories about Ozzy Osbourne's final concert have blown your mind, hit that subscribe button right now. And please, drop a comment below and tell us, what was the strangest thing you ever saw at a concert? Let's know in the comments below.